What is it that makes a man a man? Is it his origins? The way things start? Or is it something else, something harder to describe? Like being featured as the Demon of the Month right here on Monster Menagerie. Welcome to Monster Menagerie, presented by the Paladin Archives. This is the show where I, your humble Mason, break down pop culture characters and figure out how the Paladin Order would respond to them. My name is Mason Kren. Mason is the title, Kren is the name. This year, we've looked at a slew of unique demons. Everything from the projectile-vomiting Pazuzu to the dapper radio demon Alistair. And today's selection is no less unique. I present to you, straight from the BPRD, Hellboy. I fought and debated over whether or not to do this one. If you recall last year, we looked at vampires, and one suggestion I got quite often was Blade. I didn't end up doing him because, in my opinion, half vampires or dompiers are fundamentally different from vampires. They're kind of their own thing. Likewise, I was hesitant to touch Hellboy for the same reason. But I mean, the term demon is so varied already to the point that it's almost impossible to pin down a consistent meaning. In my Pazuzu episode, I did an entire segment on just what it even means to be a demon. And frankly, within those confines, I don't see much of a difference between a Cambion, the nerd word for a half-demon, and most demons within their respective franchises. Honestly, most of the time I see them, they're just slightly less powerful versions of their dads. And yes, it is almost always their dad. Inuyasha, Dante and Virgil, Raven. All of them are extremely strong and easily could be called demons, despite having a father that's stronger and arguably more demonic. So too is the situation with Hellboy. I mean, look at him. More than Morrigan, more than Azrael, more than even Hunson, Hellboy looks the part. He came through a portal from a dark realm where the 7 gods of chaos slumber in a crystal prison. It's definitely a Lovecraft-type demonic realm, but seeing as how it seeks to burn the heavens, I'll count it. Standard disclaimer, as always, I'm only looking at one instance of Hellboy. In this case, the 2004 movie starring Ron, War Never Changes, Perlman. Nothing from the subsequent movies, the video games, and yes, the comic, will be considered for my analysis. Before we get too far in, I just want to remind you that like last year, we're going to be taking all the demons we look at this year and stacking them against one another at the end of the year. It's going to be an awesome event with some special expert guests. We did something similar last year with our vampire experts, and I think it's going to be even better this year. If you want to help out and make sure you don't miss any of the demons we look at this year, make sure you like and subscribe. We have new demons being reviewed every month, and you never know when we'll drop something special. Okay, it's time. Grab your Samaritan, sync up your locators, and unwrap your baby Ruths.
Come on, champ. Let's go fight some monsters.
In 1944, at the tail end of World War II, a troop of American soldiers, accompanied by paranormal expert Professor Trevor Broom Brutenholm, foiled a plot by the bad Germans. Utilizing the dark skills of Grigory Rasputin, they opened a portal into a dark dimension, intent on freeing entities that could turn the tide of the war. But even though their plot was thwarted, something did come through.
It's a boy!
It's just a baby boy!
Hellboy, a young demon creature bearing little red horns, a tail, and a giant stone fist known as the Right Hand of Doom. Broom adopted the young boy, and with the formation of the BPRD, the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, our hero began a long career of hunting monsters and creating a whole host of issues for his FBI handler.
There is no such thing.
I actually see a lot of parallels between Hellboy's BPRD and the Paladin Order. We're a bigger organization, and we operate without the knowledge of many world governments. But there's a lot in common. No monsters hunting monsters, though. So far as I'm aware, the Order doesn't ordain any vampires or werewolves to assist in the great work. Actually, the more I think about it, they're actually a lot more like the BDA, the Bureau of Demonic Affairs. That's the U.S. government's clandestine branch that kind of oversees facilities. I mean, maybe more, but if I keep talking about them, I might get in trouble. Back to Red. The big guy apparently fell in love with a pyrokinetic, colloquially known as fire starters, named Liz Sherman. The movie doesn't go into great detail, but she seems to have had some, let's say, traumatic events with fire in her past, causing her to be brought on board with the BPRD, at least for a while. She checked herself into a mental health facility to help get control of both herself and her fire conjuring abilities. Hellboy, he didn't take it well.
Liz left us, Red. Take the hint.
We don't take hints.
Now, that big red fist of his is actually pretty interesting. I know we learn a lot more in the comics and other movies, but just from this movie, we find out his fist is the key, literally, to the apocalypse. Grafted onto him as a child, it opens the gateway between our world and the world of the 7 Chaos Gods. It is, apparently, his destiny to usher in the end of days and leave the world a charred husk lorded over by unimaginable Lovecraftian horrors. He spent decades with the BPRD hunting monsters across the country, perhaps even the world, being brought in for big threats that standard BPRD agents just can't handle. He loves baby Ruths, eats 6 times a day, loves cats for some reason, and files his horns down to fit in with humans, which could be a good sign for negotiations. But if we were to engage, we'd need to be a bit more familiar with what he brings to the table, so let's take a closer look at his abilities. Possibly the most important part of my report to the Paladins in the field are the powers and abilities of whatever threat they're facing. Much like Hellboy himself, the Paladins want to know what a monster can do, what kind of precautions they should take, and
Cut to the end, will you? How do I kill it?
First off, he's a trained government agent, practically born to kill monsters. By his own admission, he's a terrible shot, but
The Samaritan here uses really big bullets.
he seems to have at least a passable knowledge of monster weaknesses, seeing as how he made his own bullets.
Holy water, clove leaves, silver shavings, white oak. The wakes.
I have to admit, there are probably plenty of paladins that would love bullets that had all those packed into one shot, but, there's something to be said for specialization and, affordability. Holy water is whatever, but, silver shavings? Not on my paycheck. Anyway, we should consider the Samaritan when considering the idea of a rogue Hellboy. I peeked at some other sources, and apparently the gun is made of some seriously blessed mojo, which makes sense. If you take a look, the Samaritan only holds 4 shots, but he fires 8 times before having to reload. Not sure if it's a strange mechanic of the gun or if there's some magic going on to extend its capacity. Beyond that, there's not much to consider in his training. Abe Sapien, his psychic amphibian friend, relates monster info to him. He himself is much more likely to go in guns a-blazing and stone fist a-swinging. Probably his most impressive demonic ability, I think, is his resilience. He's tossed through museum displays, falls out a building, and has a subway terminal station collapse on him and is, of course, immune to fire.
I'm fireproof. You're not.
Strangely, that ability seems to transfer to whatever clothing he's wearing, so it can't be a physical property. Perhaps some kind of enchantment? We actually see something quite similar with Liz. Definitely some kind of magic. Now, of course, anyone who's watched the show knows my favorite part of any analysis is doing some nerdy math to figure out how strong or fast our subjects are. I've calculated, poorly, Lady Domitresque's strength and Edward Cullen's speed. I'm excited to see how Hellboy's physical prowess stacks up. Now, first things first, I want to get the bad part out of the way. He sucks at jumping. Well, okay, he's probably better at jumping than I am, but for a demonic creature on this show, he sucks at jumping. Let's take a look at the scene where he tries to jump into a New York City subway train to chase after Samael. According to Agent Manning, Hellboy is 6'5". In this scene, Hellboy's feet are dragging on the ground, meaning he's pretty much at standing height. According to my research, most metro platforms in the Northeast are 48 inches tall, which means the floor of the train, which must be level with the platform, is also 48 inches tall. That's about 4 feet or 121.92 centimeters for my metric friends. Now, I want to make this part clear. Hellboy can jump. He's just really bad at it. We can see early in the movie, while chasing Samael, he leaps over a chest-high wall. But when he tries to jump onto that train, look at how early he leaps and how bad the arc is. Boom! Subway train to the chest. Oh, it's not a one-off either. It's almost a running gag. Check out his attempt to Batman his way from roof to roof.
Oh, crap!
Like I said, much better than I could ever do, but not terribly impressive for our list of demons. Well, I think he could outjump Pazuzu. Maybe. Now, I didn't see much in the way of speed, but boy, do we get a couple of good strength checks. Sadly, it's really hard to narrow down exactly how heavy a load he's dealing with in each, but I'll try my best. We'll go in order of impressiveness. First up, our boy Red punches through a brick wall down in the subway. Not bad, but nothing a person with a sledgehammer couldn't replicate. And yes, I'm considering the right hand of doom to be a good sledgehammer analog. All in all, not bad, but we can do better. Shortly after that, we see Hellboy lift a giant grate that gives him just a smidge of resistance. Now, I wasn't able to track down what kind of grate this was, and thus I can't get its weight, but we can try to get in the ballpark, I think. Forgive me, I'm trying to become an expert on subway cars, sewer grates, and all kinds of other engineering bits that I am just not cut out for, so this is going to be sloppy. Looking closely at this grate, it reminds me of a New York City manhole cover, which are cast iron and weigh between 150 to 300 pounds. Those are about 36 inches in diameter on the high end. This is roughly twice that, so 74 inches. I think we can safely bump that up to 500 plus pounds. Next, and man, these aren't getting easier to calculate, is this cog? Gear? Okay, so that thing is freaking huge. Let's make some very poor assumptions here. Man, I need to hire a math nerd to help me with these things. Back of the napkin calculations here, the giant cogwheel looks like it could be cast iron, about 5 feet in diameter. His stone hand nearly clasps around it, so maybe 6 inches thick. We'll call the cog a very thin cylinder, so its volume is pi r squared times height. So, math, about 7.07 feet cubed. Weight equals volume times density. Plug in our numbers. 7.07 feet cubed times, the density of cast iron, which is about 26 pounds per cubed inch. So we get about 6,340 pounds, give or take, which is like 3 tons. Not bad at all. But our top prize for Hellboy's strength has to be early on when a car nearly flattens his new partner, John Myers. He flips the car with a punch. Now, if you watch this show regularly, you might be familiar with one of my sources, the Internet Movie Firearms Database. It's a place that documents guns in movies. I relied heavily on this for my analysis of Celine from Underworld. Well, there's a similar site for vehicles, conveniently named the Internet Movie Car Database. According to them, the car in question is a BMW 3 Touring, likely the 2003-2004 model, because that's when the movie was released. If we round up, the car weighs in at about 4,000 pounds. The scene is in slow motion, but at double speed it feels about right, so let's say the car is in the air for about 3 to 5 seconds. It goes up about 10 feet and past him in an arc about 20. Force equals change in momentum over time, so to travel that distance, it would have been around 40 feet per second. So our momentum change is 4,000 pounds times the 40 feet per second, so that's about 160,000 pounds per feet per second. Divide that by 4 seconds, and you get 40,000 pounds. Hellboy had to deliver 40,000 pounds of force to flip an oncoming car. That's the equivalent of dropping 3 elephants on it. Oh, damn, we used elephants again. That's 1/5 of a blue whale. Yeah, there we go. Now, physics be damned, I think the car would likely have continued on its normal trajectory and just smushed them both while his fist ate through the hood like butter. But again, I have to go on what we see. And what we see is Hellboy flipping a car like he was hitting a strength tester at the county fair. So, moral of the story? Don't let him punch you. Now, being that he's the hero, we don't see people specifically going after him in a way that really outs his weaknesses. We have to make some inferences based on the fights he has with Samael and the other Lovecraftian horrors. First off, fire's out, obviously. He's heavily impervious to blunt trauma and concussive force, too. When he's in the throat of this thing, I believe it's called the Behemoth, he sets off a chain of grenades, point blank. They rip through the creature, but leave him with just mildly smoldering clothes. No, we have to think a bit more about this one. Now, it looks like holy relics might hurt him. When captured by Rasputin and forced to usher in the apocalypse, he's tossed his father's crucifix. If you look here, you can see that it clearly burns into his palm, suggesting that other similar weapons could work as well. I wonder if his own bullets would bring him down. Well, I mean, they're huge, so silver and holy water or not, I'd wager they'd hurt pretty bad anyway, but... Secondly, just before the crucifix, we see him bound. Unable to break free of chains he should, theoretically, be able to shatter. Why? Well, much like in our world, the names of demons are a powerful thing. And that little metal ring around his right hand, that bears the inscription, Anung Un Rama, his true name. This is perfect. I love it when things like this line up with stuff we already do in the Order. It's pretty standard protocol that if you can find a demon's name, you use it. That name can give you a huge advantage in nearly any interaction with a demon, from compelling them to speak to just strengthening your capacity to exercise them. Names are powerful things. Back to Red, while falling out of a building or having a subway collapse on him doesn't seem to bother him too much, a little egg-laying thing from Samael manages to chew into him and lay some eggs. That insinuates that cutting, slicing, and piercing, these are way more viable than just hitting him really hard. I'm not sure how this fares for gunfire, but I'd have to imagine, especially if you pair it with the right ammunition, he'd be just as susceptible. Okay, hand-to-hand combat with Hellboy is off limits. Sure, he's not the most amazing fighter I've seen. Morgan could probably best him there with ease. But when he does get his hand on you, you're pretty much dead. I'm thinking we need to play the numbers game and keep a distance. If for some reason we do end up having to engage him, anti-freak tactics should be sufficient as they're trained to fight targets much stronger. Holy relics are a must, so crucifixes of course, but I'm thinking holy water? Maybe some specialized bullets? Samael managed to penetrate him without anything special, so we might just need, heavier caliber ammunition. Now, interestingly, when paladins head out against demons, they'll often wear white vestments under their cassock, something to help dispel or lessen the effect of any demonic force. I wonder if something like that would have any effect on Hellboy physically grabbing them. Like, even if it was just like a mild shock, it might still be enough to throw him off his game. Now, while he recovers fast, hard blows can drop him for a moment or two. If we want to capture him, I might consider a concussion rifle, a special non-lethal weapon we use on big critters to bring them down. Tasers or incendiary rounds are obviously pointless, but if we can stun him for a moment and shackle him, something with his name engraved on it, we might have him. For more lethal options, I'm thinking holy blades. Blessed ammunition would be good, of course, but I haven't seen what bullets do to him. I'd definitely try it, definitely want to use some ranged weaponry, but I think we need to have some holy blades just in case. Masons within the Paladin Order perform many duties. It's said that Masons are there to take on any job Paladins don't want to do themselves. I mean, we don't actually hunt anything, but we do all the grunt work, from research to cleaning. And that's not counting field Masons, the men and women who have regular 9-to-5 jobs but provide an occasional service to the Order, like letting Paladins crash at their hotel or EMTs stitching up Paladins after a scuffle. For me, working in the stewardship, I'm assigned to the archives. Records of every monster, ghost, spirit, and undead creature the Order has ever faced are at my fingertips, so when a Paladin calls into me, well, honestly, they're probably calling Maddie since she's my superior, but conceptually, when they call into me, they need information on their prey, and they need it nice and concise, and probably in small words. To that end, I provide Paladins with a threat level. It's kind of a shorthand used to summarize a creature's lethality. Usually there are sub-rankings as well, depending on the kind of creature we're talking about, and for demons, it's their class type. Remember, the first one tells you how bad it is, the second one tells them what kind it is. Technically speaking, the threat level scale goes from 1 to 10, but practically, it tops out at 6. Everything beyond that is more hypothetical. Room to grow, There's always a worse fate, right? And to emphasize, for those that are new, it's weighted toward the bottom, so a 2 isn't twice as dangerous as a 1. For example, a threat level 1 could be Clarence. Yes, Clarence the Vampire. Normally I wouldn't out a specific threat by name. I wouldn't dox them, but freaking Clarence. He knows what he did. And I had to clean it up. Now, Clarence is a neophyte vampire, so I think a strong enough flashlight could end him. Not that stops him from being a pain in my... Never mind. Point is, a single paladin with some garlic they grabbed at the shop right on the way can end him. God, I wish they would. But, a 10? A 10 would be if a small child digging innocently in their backyard unearthed the wandering cask of Kahum, a chance beyond chance as it aligns with the earthly realm for mere seconds over the span of centuries, only for it to stake itself into our plane, to take the child as its avatar and use their innocence to infiltrate a chain of people, transferring from host to host, leaving each one an empty, used husk until it found the new and grand network of communication, our internet. For where once its horror spread only amongst the few learned who could read, now it begins its unfettered infection of the human mind, spreading across the planet in only days, overwhelming all attempts to stop it until, at last, enough people have been taken to satisfy the hunger of Kahum, and the great dark priest offers those lost souls as a sacrifice, not to conjure, not to summon, not to release, but to birth the coming of the new dark god who shall take Earth as its first meal. That's a 10. Try not to worry too much about it. If we ever reach a 10, I doubt they'd even tell us. There wouldn't be a point. So, Hellboy, right? He's definitely not a world ender. Well, I guess technically he is the right hand of doom and all, but minus that, he's pretty standard fare monster. Well, demon, but a weird kind of demon for us. He ages slowly, he always gets up, but I think he's definitely mortal. Samael was able to pierce that hide. He gets knocked down fairly often, and he just can't jump. He sits in a strange place, really hard to bring down, but also just not that dangerous on his own. Relatively speaking, yes, he's a huge demon with a stone fist that could pop your head like a grape if he wanted. But we're not going to hear about the greater Houston area in shambles after a Hellboy rampage. This is a really tough one, but man, Ron Perlman, forgive me. I give Hellboy a threat level 2. Before you get upset, that puts him on the same level as Selene from Underworld. Look at her. There's a lot of similarities. They're both technically these insanely powerful creatures of myth, but they mostly just rely on big guns. Though Selene jumps a lot better. Now, class ranking has nothing to do with threat. It's more like helping the paladin in the field know what kind of demon to expect. For example, a Class 1 demon is a mindless thing, barely understands what it is, and has trouble even maintaining a hold on this plane. Class 2 is much more sentient, but they require a host body to do anything serious. Hellboy, he's a big beefy boy that ain't going nowhere he doesn't want to go, so he is easily a Class 3 demon. Paperwork time. Recommend Parish Paladins. Focus on anti-freak tactics to subdue with a focus on ranged attacks. Blessed ammunition, concussive weaponry, and engraved manacles for capture. Blessed blades for melee encounters. Utilize numbers. That was about where I thought Hellboy was gonna come out. I'm sure there's some of you out there that think Hellboy should be rated higher on the threat level, but remember, the threat scale isn't about how cool the character is, how strong they are, or even how popular. It's about how dangerous they are, and Hellboy likes people. He grinds his horns to fit in. Even if he goes rogue, I just don't see him being an impossible case to bring in. But while he may not be on top of the threat level board, he still has a good chance to come out as this year's top demon. Yes, just like last year when we compared and ranked vampires, we're also going to be taking Hellboy, Hunson Abadir, Alistair, Morrigan, Azrael, and Pazuzu, along with whatever demons come next, and rank them all at the end of the year. I've already talked to some amazing demon VTubers who are down to lend their expertise, so make sure you stay tuned so you don't miss out on who's next. And you know how you can make doubly sure you don't miss out? A little like, a little subscribe, and just for that cherry on top, hit that little bell icon. We've got a lot of good stuff on the horizon and you won't want to miss it. Speaking of amazing demon VTubers, The music you're listening to right now, The Mason's Curiosity, was produced by the amazing Small Quinn. She's a good friend of mine, and she does amazing work with music. Here, take a listen to a couple of her free songs you can download right now. If you need something for your new project, if you got a channel you need music for, Quinn's got you covered. Oh, and if you get the strange feeling that all this paladin stuff feels bigger than just a weird little mason talking about demons, you're right. It's actually a book debuting soon. You can check out our website, linked down below. There you can find amazing artwork, insight into the order, take a quiz to see which paladin discipline you are, and of course, read samples from the book and other short stories. Guys, I have a story about Teddy Roosevelt hunting scores of werewolves. You know you're a little curious. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to hit us up on Twitter and catch our regular streams over on Twitch. We play chill games, talk about the silliest of things, and of course, go over paladin stuff. I gotta run though. I just heard Clarence was rounded up. Again. And I know they're going to try to pawn processing off on me, so I got to make myself scarce. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's hiding out there. I love Hellboy as much as the next guy, but look at how many cats live in one room, especially with all of those like giant bowls of chili. Can you imagine the smell in Hellboy's room?